We're really glad that you're here tonight. We're going to be talking about how to help kids build self-esteem. And that's such an important quality for kids to be able to have and to really feel it, not just pretend feel it, but to really feel like that they are worthy, that they are capable, and that they value their own thinking. And so sometimes that's hard when you're a kid. Sometimes it's hard when you're an adult, to say the least, right? Because other people influence us. And so we're going to be talking about how to build self-esteem in kids. So I'm Cindy, and I'm the doctor, and this is Brett, the coach. And so he will be giving you lots of very practical insights and also connecting it to the real world, which I think is really important. Sometimes we do things and we talk about it up here, right? Like it's in theory, and that's wonderful. But if you can't apply it, you better go take it and play Jeopardy, because Jeopardy is the only place I know that just cares about what you know, what you can, instead of what you can do. And so we're going to try tonight to take it from this topic, from awareness. You're aware of it because that's why you're here, and then give you some basic knowledge, some skills, some things like that. And then we'll talk about understanding how to use it, and then the actual hard part, which is application. And Robert is with us, and I think he's hiding out, but he will be asking questions. And if you have a question, please put it in the chat and get that to him, because we'd love to have your live questions. We have questions that we're asked all the time when we're working with people that we're going to share tonight, but we'd love to answer your questions as well. So, Brett, do you have anything you'd like to say before we get started?
No.
No? Okay, then I think that
was... Which I guess is a lie, because I just said something, right?
Right. No, exactly.
I just shook my head.
Yes. That's so true of all of us, right? No, yes, I say that all the time. No, I don't have anything to say, and then I continue to say it. Yeah, all right, so Robert, it's to you. What's our first question that we're going to take a look at?
Our first question is, why is self-esteem important for youth development?
So I think that it's important because it's what allows you to become you. It allows you to fail, which is first attempt in learning, and not give up. It allows you to keep moving. And failure is not a failure unless you quit. And so it's really important that we help kids understand that everything doesn't go well the first time, or maybe the 200th time. We're always learning. We're always getting stronger. And sometimes we go, you know what, that's just not in my wheelhouse. But that takes self-esteem to realize that you can say no to something. So I just think it's important so that young people can move forward. And when I look at these kids that we work with, how do you know what's possible for them? How do you know that you're not talking to the kid who's going to be the first human on Mars? How do you know that? How do you know that you're not talking to the kid who's going to come up with Web 4? Right? How do you know that? We don't know what they're capable of. And so with building self-esteem, it will allow them to become whoever that is that they were meant to be. So, Coach, I'll pitch it to you.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about maximizing people's potential, whatever that potential is, but how do we really know what the potential is, right? I mean, nobody could run a 4-minute mile until they did, right? Nobody could swim, however, I don't know a lot about swimming, but, whatever that was, or do 3 rotations in a dive, or, until they did. And so I always tell people all the time, hey, let that self-esteem run wild, because the only limitations that are out there are the ones that you put on yourself. I think the other thing is too, that especially around youth, but like you were talking about earlier, even for the adults, it shapes how they view themselves. And what we know is that stacking is important, right? So if you're talking about spiritual religious, it's spiritual stacking. If you're talking about getting big and buff and physical, it's stacking, right? And so you stack all of these wins on top of each other, and even the losses, because you learn from them, right? And so whatever those things are, so I think it really shapes how the youth view themselves and the potential of them. So the first time that you go and you try to high jump over putting together Legos as a foundation, right? If you've got, 500 Legos versus one Lego, that 500 is going to be the strong foundation. So then as they get into adolescence and young adulthood, and even as young adults and beyond, they've already had all these successes. They've already stacked all of these. We have a course uh, that talks about sure self-awareness. That's one of the sections of the five. And, understanding that self-awareness, it goes hand in glove or shoe and foot with self-esteem. Because if you're aware of yourself, you're going to understand what your strengths and your weaknesses are. And you accentuate those strengths, and then you try to mitigate the weaknesses, right? So to speak. So to me, when they say, the question is, why is it important in youth development? It's everything, right? Because the quicker we can get this, and the more solid the foundation can be laid by stacking these things on top of each other, then when we get to, I won't say GMA's age at 42, but my age at 56, then you're pretty good at stuff typically.
Absolutely. You were talking about nobody can run a 4-minute mile until somebody does. I can remember when I was in high school, when the dinosaurs, right, were around, we had an Olympic athlete named Bob Richards who came and showed us pole vaulting, because we didn't, at my high school, we didn't have pole vaulting. And he pole vaulted 15 feet, a little over 15 feet. And everybody was like, whoa, right? So amazing. And he held a world record for a while. And now 15 feet would be nothing, right? It would be considered very amateurish. And I just think about that's so true with so many things, right? That when you look back 20 years ago, the thought of a smartphone and what it can do was pretty much non-existent. They've only been around for about 20 years. You had a flip phone, right? And now, exactly. And now you use your smartphone for everything all the time. So yeah, and somebody invented that. Somebody had self-esteem enough to try that when it didn't appear that it was possible.
Yeah, stacking matters for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. So Robert, we're pitching it back to you.
Our next question is, how can I help youth recognize their strengths?
One of the things I like to do, not just with youth, but with youth leaders as well, with the adults, is to do a strength finder. And what that allows you to do is it kind of gives you this, would you rather this or this, right? And it helps you to start to define your strengths. And you can find those, and you can pay a fortune for them, or you can find them for free. But what you're doing is, I do the free ones, by the way, but what it's doing is allowing you to realize who you are. And so when you talk about multiple intelligences, Howard Gardner was the first one who really started pushing this idea that people can be smart in different ways. And until that time, until he came out with this idea that everybody doesn't have to be smart in exactly the same way to be considered smart, which was a really surprising concept, right? Everybody thought you had to be able to score well in math and reading, and that meant you were smart. And if you were good at anything else, not so much. But he looked through these multiple intelligences, and he said, look, everybody's strong in different areas. So some people, yes, are strong in reading, and others are strong in math, but some are strong in music. Some are strong in personal awareness. Others are strong in how they get along with other people. Some people are smart, and this would not be me, about having a green thumb, right? They're able to grow plants. Me, I grow plastic or silk, because if it comes down to me to grow a live plant, good luck to you, because I've killed many of them. And so, that's not my thing. But for some people, they're amazing in the garden, right? Everything they touch in the garden is amazing. So there's that. Or some people are body smart. They're athletes. They have this really keen sense about who they are. And another one that people have are these spatial relationships. And that would also not be my strong suit. People who can say, when people ask me, will this fit into there? I don't know. maybe try it. Whereas you can ask Brett for sure, and he will pack it and not leave 1 square inch that's not full of stuff, because that's something that's one of his many intelligences. So I think when we look at this, you help them to recognize them by giving them opportunities to explore them, but also to identify the things they enjoy, the things that come easy for them. And then they can start to do that. So if you look at Gardner's multiple intelligences, if you look at strength finders, and you start to capture that, I think that that helps young people really try it out. And also, a lot of young people, like girls in particular, would really like to be dancers. They'd really like to be cheerleaders, but they may not have the skill set, the physical skill set to be able to be a top level cheerleader or dancer. But we give them opportunities to try that out when they're young, so they can go, I like this, but I'm not willing to work as hard as I need to work to be really masterful. And I think that's one of the advantages that we give kids in expanded learning, is the opportunity to try out stuff when it's low risk. You don't have to be a great cheerleader when you're 7. Now, when you are 17, that probably has changed for you. But I think that that's one of the things we can do, which is to help kids explore what it is that I'm strong at and that I enjoy, not just that I'm good at. I've read about swimmers who are great swimmers, but they just don't like it anymore. It's not what they wanted. They don't want that intensity, that competition. Then they bow out. So it's really about what you enjoy and what you're good at. So that was a long answer on my part. So Brett, I'll send it to you.
Well, there's a lot. I'll probably give a long answer too, because I already had thoughts in my head, and then as you were talking, I thought a lot more thoughts, so to speak, right? But I thought you were going to go with the dancer. We had mentioned a couple times in this podcast about the eighth grade girl that was just mesmerizing when she danced, and it's funny how God, or whatever your modus operandi is on that, how He works. We just happened to, on a fluke, get a guy that was a great choreographer, or whatever they're called, people that choreograph. I don't know what they're called, but he was from LA, and he did a lot of the music videos, and he was big time. We had to come home to Bakersfield and to take care of his mom. And so we got him for 3 hours a day. And this guy was amazing, right? The stuff he did with kids. Well, we were watching that eighth grade girl, and my mom and I, and I'm not a teary eyed kind of guy. I got tears in my eyes. We were just mesmerized by this girl. And so when she came up and at the end of the show, and she introduced herself, and we were just like, wow, that was absolutely amazing. And she said with tears in her eyes, I didn't know I was a dancer. So what does that mean? Well, test, not guess. Meaning, just like Gma said, put them in a bunch of different variety of things to find out what their strengths are. There's a lot of assessments out there. We have a spiritual gifts assessment that we do that talks about people's gifts, and from a biblical perspective. If you're in a school system, obviously that's a little bit tough to do. We have put it into where it has nothing to do with spiritual. We kind of changed the words there, and it's more of a mindset thing. But it's cool because we have this battery of tests, and then we can kind of have an idea. But just because we have an idea doesn't mean that that's 100% going to be the case. So we want to try all kinds of different things. Talk to them about what they think their purpose is. Talk to them what they think their passion could be. So for me, I know I wanted to coach and teach since I was knee high to a turnip. So that's pretty easy for me. Right now, my classroom, as Gma said, has changed over the years, but my purpose and passion has never changed, to be able to help people to maximize themselves in whatever it is that they want to do, whether that be in money or in life or in their health or physical or mental or whatever, any of those types of things. The other thing is this. So I've mentioned this before. I can't screw a screw 2 inches, but I can throw a football 70 yards. Well, there's other people that can screw screws in their sleep. They're going and they have this thing. Robert is very handy like that. He did my whole patio in less than 3 hours. I'm like, well, first of all, I would have cut my finger off. I would have had to go to the hospital. That would have taken probably 24 hours. Then it would have taken me another 10 hours to, so on and so forth. Or I know my son and I, who's the athlete, we did the same thing. It took us 8 hours to build this, it was a pegboard. We were hanging action figures on it. We were doing this big collector con, and it fell apart on us when we took it there and we started hanging stuff. So my buddy, I call him MacGyver. In 30 minutes, he come and fixed the whole thing, right? So that's what's crazy to me. Again, going back to teams and physical activity and so on and so forth, it takes a village. So you want to find the strengths, not only for the individuals, but for the teams. As we've talked about many times, biblically speaking, not everybody can be the eyes, not everybody can be the ears, not everybody can be the hands. So we want to find the strengths of all the people, utilize them to the fullest, and that's what's going to get the biggest bang for the buck for humanity.
And will they feel great about it? Yes, they will. Right? Success breeds success. So, Robert, do you have a question number 3?
Yes, our next question is what activities promote self confidence in youth?
I think that everything you do promotes confidence, right? If people say, "Well, I'm afraid to do that." Okay, but don't let fear stop you. So sometimes we have to do it in spite of. So people will say, "Well, I'm afraid of that." Well, that's right, but bravery and courage is not because you're not afraid. It's because you do it anyway. So I think that you give kids lots of opportunities. Give them opportunities to speak in class. If they really like that and that's something they appreciate doing, then let them talk at the PTA meeting or let them talk in front of all of the students in your expanded learning program and give them the pep talk for the day, right? Let's go get them. Maybe if they really, really like it, maybe you're going to have them be the presenters at the board, the school board, so that they can hear kids. A lot of times adults like to talk, but what's powerful is kids telling kids stories. And so you may have a perfect child for doing that. One of the best ambassador guides I ever had was a first grader. And her name was Leslie, and she was amazing. And she had the gift of gab. She'd learned from people. She'd shadowed people doing this, and she'd say, she would walk you to a place and talk to you about what did you like about expanded learning? And this is what she liked, and this is where you were going to go. And she was amazing. And she was 7, right? So we can't underestimate or decide, well, you're not going to be able to do public speaking until you're 13. Then you'll be able to do it. No, they need to be able to try these things along the way, and giving them opportunities to try things out. And then I think that it's important that they get feedback of some sort. So one of the things that we've instituted is this like best and next time. And instead of saying this I liked and this I didn't like, which can be pretty defeating for a kid, it's I really liked this, and next time I wish you would do more of this, so that kids can get feedback about possibilities. So I think if you're really trying to promote self-confidence, you have to participate in things that allow you to develop it. And then you need to debrief it and talk about it. How did that feel to you? What could you have done that would have made it feel even better for you, right? What will you do the next time so that you don't have butterflies? And to let them know that it's okay to be nervous about things like that. But I think self-confidence, you build it by doing stuff, not by avoiding it. And so every opportunity we can give kids to participate, to share what they've been doing, to get accolades and praises in public and snaps and whatever it is that you're going to do, I think that's what boosts self-confidence. And I think that they understand when they've done something and done it well. And then if something doesn't go well, okay, let's learn from it. And that will also help build self-confidence. You can't sugarcoat it. You can't say, oh, that was perfect, when it wasn't. They'll know that. So be sure that you're giving not gross, gratuitous praise, but very specific praise about what you want them to do more of. But that to me is how you build self-confidence. So coach?
Yeah, yeah. So I would say the same thing. I would frame it just a little bit different, but we're saying the exact same thing. Find universals, right? So when you talk about public speaking, figure it out. Do you speak in public? Yes. That's a universal. So get those things foundationally started at a very young age to build that confidence. What about music? So back in the day, everything wasn't so specifically isolated. So you're going to be a baseball player and you're going to be a baseball player forever, and I'm going to start you at 4, and that's all you're going to do. And it's like, no, what we did back in the day is that we had to do music. Well, let me ask you, as an adult, do you do anything with music? Yeah, you sing in the car. Do you have to understand rhythm? Yeah, when you go to a wedding, you're going to dance at a wedding, or you're going to sit in the back corner and look like a doorknob, right? Right. So there's these universal things that we're all going to do as adults, and we for sure want to help them to practice so that they can build that self confidence in the universals. Then I think on top of that, then you go to the next layer, which are the specifics, which go to the last question. What am I specifically good at? What are my strengths? And then you want to continue to build over and over in that so that they can accentuate what they're already great at. And again, the things they're not great at, it's not like you're just going to never do them, but you're going to mitigate. It's not like you're going to do them 10 hours a day. That one, it makes sense. You would just do it maybe for 10 minutes a day or whatever the case may be. GMA came up with a really cool thing that we call that she calls the street team, right? And this is like the classroom monitors, right? Everybody should have a little bit of a job where you can rotate them so that they can find out, and that will promote that self-confidence because they'll find something that they're good at. And she can elaborate more maybe at the end when I'm done on the street team. But that's a really cool way to do that. The other thing is that, it's the kid in the wood pile, right? You don't have to be great all at once. You just have to take one step. So inch by inch is a cinch, mile by mile takes a while. So I've said this before as a touch point, but I'll say it again. So the kid was in a cabin and it's completely pitch black out there in the middle of the mountains. And he's kind of fidgeting towards the door, and his dad's over in the corner looking at him like, "What are you doing, man?" He's like, "I want to get to the wood pile because I'm freezing." And he's like, "Well, you have a flashlight, don't you?" And the kid's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, put it down at your feet. And what do you see?" And he said, "One step." He goes, "Okay, take one step. Now what do you see?" And you get the point. So inch by inch is a cinch. And so, you don't have to, especially the stuff that it's tough for them. Don't be like, GMA said, "Okay, you're going to go speak in front of 1,000 people in front of the whole school on Tuesday. And oh, by the way, that's in an hour from now. Go for it." No, give them a little bit, right? Hi, how are you doing? How are you doing? Hi, how are you doing? What did you have for dinner last night? I mean, right, inch by inch is a cinch. So maybe, GMA, you can talk about how that might fit in for self-esteem with the street team.
Yeah. So the street team, so first of all, I will say this, and I probably have said this more than once, the most underutilized resource that every expanded learning program, every school day teacher has is students. What we do is we look at them as they're going to be the object of us doing something. And if they don't need that, they need us to do things with them. And they need to be a resource provider, not just a resource user. So I don't know about you in expanded learning, excuse me, but there is always more to do than any single person can ever get done. So what you want is a team. Well, if you try and use just the adults, they're going, "Whoa, not me. I've already got my 3 hours taken care of." So who does that leave you with? Students. So what I like to do is get a group of students who want to practice and exercise their voice and their choice and to be a leader. And so you can do that all kinds of ways. You can select them. You can ask people to nominate them from their classroom, or you could do an actual job application and they would apply just like they would in the real world. And they have to have a letter of reference from either their teacher or their program leader or their parent or a friend But somebody has to say, yes, I think this person is capable. Now, if you want, you can have an election or you can just pick them after you interview them. So what I like to do is, let's say that we have a street team of somewhere, depending on the size of your program, between 8 and 12 kids. And I would have group A of 8 to 12 kids, and then I would have group B of 8 to 12 kids, so that I have two groups that I would be working with. And so what is it that they could do that would be really helpful for me as a site coordinator? So as a site coordinator, I'm going to guess that you have expectations of your people. Maybe you would like for them to wear their staff shirt every day, and they either wear it or they don't. It's very clear. They either have it on or they don't. Maybe you also want them to wear a badge so that they can get in and out since all the gates are locked. And you either wear your badge or you don't. Maybe you would like to have them have their agreements posted. What does it mean? What will we do if we're being safe and respectful and responsible? And you might want those posted and reviewed. You might want a greeter every time you come into a classroom. One of the students' jobs is to be the greeter and come up and say, hi, this is who I am. Anyway, you would, whatever those things are. So what you're going to do is set them up to be able to go, this street team, you'll go with them the first few times, and they're going to go into each classroom at different times, and they're going to go check, check, no check, check. And they're going to come back and report it. Now, you don't have to monitor those things. The kids are monitoring it for you. And then they can put it on a board. Well, that's very helpful to you. How many of you struggle sometimes getting substitutes? I call in at the last minute and you can't get a substitute. And now you, as a site coordinator, have to become part of ratio. Well, if you take the street team and you teach them how to do things like a physical activity, and a physical activity that would start with a warm-up, the activity, a cool down, and a debrief. You teach them how to do that. And so they could go out, and instead of you joining, one person could have 40 kids, but the street team is taking these kids in individual clusters and teaching them the lesson. Or you could have them do art lessons inside, because some days it's really not okay to be outside. Anyway, what you do is you create this team of kids who learn how to do great and wonderful things. They're leading, they learn how to tutor and go down and support kids that are younger than them. They also learn how to do cross-age tutoring. And you're teaching them. And then the group A is going to work with group B so that group B is taught. So this whole idea of street team is about developing in kids the ability to lead themselves, to be part of a team, and to lead others. Those are the first three levels of leadership: self first, being a contributing team member second, and being a leader of others third. And so by doing that, what you're doing is building their confidence. And it'll take you a while. But what you want to do is develop the first group to the point that they can now develop the second group. And then the second group could develop the third group, so that you are certainly checking in on them. But the development is happening by youth doing that. And think of the confidence builder that is. So that's what I do when I do street team. And anything that you have a need for, if you will train them, if you will work with them, if you will talk with them, kids will be able to do those things for you. So I think that, yeah, I agree. Street team is a big, big, big self-confidence builder. So that was a long answer. All right. So Robert, what's the next question?
Our next question is, how can I use positive reinforcement to build self-esteem?
So Brett, why don't you start?
Yeah, so I use what I call the post-it method. Looks like we're getting some feedback there, Robert.
Oh, yeah, so sorry.
An echo.
So I like to do post-its, right? And so there's the physical post-it when I would walk around as the program manager, and I would give physical post-its that just gave like a little bit of a praise or a positive reinforcement. But I tell the kids they can give themselves one. On the helmets, like at Ohio State, they have the stickers that they put on the helmets when they do something good, an interception or a fumble, a recovery, or a touchdown, something good, so to speak. So I think that that's a good way to be able to give positive reinforcement as some kind of a physical something. I think that the other thing is that Gmod mentioned earlier the Greg versus the gross. So that Greg Louganis, one of the best divers of all time, he would not allow his coach to say great job or good job on the dive. He would go right up in the middle of their grill and say, you tell me specifically exactly what that was. So I think if you could teach the kids to be very specific in whatever that positive reinforcement is, whether that's giving themselves or giving others, then that really helps to build the self-esteem. And it's duplicatable and replicatable to where they know, okay, I did this. So Greg Louganis knew that he could, he was tucking real tight or whatever the case may be. So then he could do that again, so to speak. And so I think that when you take a look at that and you look at the results, that's a good way to do it. But also the effort, right? Because let's say it's something they're not great at, but they can give this huge effort, then I think that needs to be rewarded as well. It's not always about the results, although most of my team would say differently because I'm a big results oriented type guy.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I agree with what you said. I don't really have much to add. I just think that we need to take every opportunity to celebrate success or celebrate effort or celebrate learning. Okay, I learned this. And even if you learn to not do something again, that's learning and that's important, right? So I think it's a process. It's not a wave the magic wand. It's a process. So
Yeah, and
Robert,
I want
oh,
to
go
say
ahead.
something, Robert, before you get to the next question that I think is important too. Again, sure self awareness, understanding yourself. Because for me, I love when people would trash talk me or what I would call negative talk. And I even do that with myself, negative self talk. Now, I think this only works for about 10 or 15% of humanity. But for me, if you told me I couldn't do something, I would do it even if I didn't want to, just to prove you wrong, right? Because I'm very competitive in nature. So sometimes I'll have, negative self talk to myself, like, come on, man, what are you doing? And it pumps me up. So for a lot of people, that would put them in the tank. But for me, it did just the opposite. So again, not only the self esteem part of it, but self awareness as well. And what gets you motivated and pumps you up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, Robert, you're up.
Our next question is, how do peer relationships impact self-esteem?
We hear a lot about cyberbullying, right? And on the internet, people attacking, and it's really easy to say something ugly to a person when you're not in front of them, right? To say it to them via the internet. Uh, and so there's a point in your life when you're trying to figure out who you are, to truly become self-aware and to be okay with who you are, that it's easy to be influenced by others. And when you are easily influenced by others, they can either ramp you up or take you down in a heartbeat. And the more kids think that if somebody's on Facebook with you and they're called your friend, if you don't know them, they're not really your friend, right? Now you may value them more than they value you. But how can they really give you a compliment or say something disrespectful or horrible to you? They don't really know who you are. Your friends are people who interact with you all the time. And I think that we need to understand that while social media is great, and you enjoy that and you can learn from that and all those things, to believe that a person who doesn't really know you has the ability to tear you down, that's pretty sad. And we don't want to do that. And I know that I've I call it giving away your power, right? When people say things to you, it is easy to give away your power and to allow everything they said to become your truth. And the fact of the matter is that may or may not be the case. It doesn't mean that you don't consider it. It means that it doesn't have to become your truth. And so I just think that part of that self-esteem, when it comes to your peers, you have to be aware that you are allowing them to influence you. And Covey has these two circles that are one inside the other. And one is your circle of influence, and the other one is your circle of concern or control or concern. The more you spend time on the circle of concern, all the things that you say, ain't it awful, and isn't this horrible, and oh my goodness, the larger it grows and the smaller your circle of influence. When you focus on how you can influence yourself, when you focus on how you can influence others by the way you choose to behave, by being an example, then you grow that circle of influence and you start to limit that circle of concern. And I think that that's an important thing for us to teach kids to do. You don't dwell on all the bad stuff all the time. It's not that you don't recognize it, but where you spend your energy is on building your strengths. So I would put that to you, Coach.
Yeah, right. I mean, peers, they can, like you said, push you up or pull you down. And typically it's probably somewhere in the middle. So I try not to listen to too much hype or too much criticism. Although for me, I'm pretty sure of what I can do and stable in my brain and have good self-esteem. So I don't mind people telling me, even if 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 the actual delivery of the message is a little bit out there, whatever, I don't care. Like I want to hear the criticisms and I want to hear the great things. Anything in between, that's not a big deal to me. I sit at the polls. Now, me being a peer for somebody else, that may not work for them so well, right? Because I do sit at the polls. So the nice thing is if I give compliments or praises, probably they're legitimate and they mean a lot to people because I don't just throw them around there. But it's the same thing. Unless it's like really, 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 really bad, I'm not going to say anything either. But either direction, if I'm the receiver of something that's, oh, you're the best in the world, you're best since the invention of the sliced bread, I bring it down, and vice versa. If they're like, you're the biggest jerk that's ever walked the face of the earth, you're no good, you're scum of the earth, I'm like, well, you're probably right. But I tend to make it more of a middling situation, either direction. But the fact of the matter is, that's as an adult. So what about as the kids? It's right. It's tough, right? So I have a bone in my nose. I got hit by when I was real young by one of those little things where there's, I don't know, they're not a teeter totter, but whatever that thing, scooter thing's called, and got smacked. My mom took me, and I was only like, I was in diapers. I was probably one or so, and the doctor didn't fix it correctly, and so I had this big bone coming out of my nose. And when I was a kid, people would be like, "Oh, you got a booger in your nose," da da da. Well, that when you're a kid, especially you're growing up, and I was a very little guy. You have all these things that you're trying to figure out and to work through. So if your peers are ragging on you in any way, shape, or form, especially with like a physical appearance, you're a shorty or you got a booger hanging out of your nose, and my nose is crooked in case you guys can't tell on camera because of that, right? And so, you have all these things. And so I've learned, at a young age, like, hey, people are going to say hateful things that are true. A lot of times they're going to say hateful things that aren't true. And so, again, don't get too high on what they say and don't get too low. Just kind of hang out in the middle. But it is a real thing, especially the younger you are and the least amount of successes you have that have been building that self-esteem, with your parents helping you or teachers or your peers, right? It's going to be even that more drastic, so to speak. So just try to hang in the middle there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's tough being a kid, right? What is it? Malcolm Gladwell says you have to have 10,000 hours worth of practice, which is mainly your whole childhood. So that by the time you get to be an adult, you're comfortable in your own skin and who you are and what you can do. And so it's, I think that I think that it's also easy as an adult to focus on what you don't want kids to do rather than to focus on what you do want them to do. And just remember that your brain doesn't process a negative. You need to hear it in positive terms. This is what I need you to do, rather than don't do this. That's much more difficult to process through. So Robert, you're up.
Next question is, what role does goal setting play in improving self-esteem?
You know, one of the things that I think is the most rewarding when you work with children, or if you elevate and now you're supervising adults who work with children. So your classroom has changed, but when you have a classroom, no matter how big or how small, the culture of that classroom should be the one that you want to create. It should be one, if what you want is for people to be willing to grow, to make mistakes and learn from them, to support and to guide and to do all those things, then you have to create a culture that allows for that. And not only allows for it, but insists that that's what occurs. So for instance, I do a lot of Zooms. And one of the things that's easy to do on Zoom is to be on a black screen, right? So that nobody can see you. So first of all, I encourage everybody to show up and actually present themselves. Then if somebody talks or speaks out or makes a comment or does anything like that, then I ask people to please go to the reaction button and send that person some thank you for rescuing me from having to be the person who talked because I didn't want to. That person shared something and they took a risk and they stepped out into a group of people that they don't really know. That's pretty amazing. And so we try to give them some sort of a reaction that says, yay, yippee, right? Finger snaps, rockets, whatever that takes. So I think that we just need to do lots and lots of praises that are specific. And I just want to comment about that specific praise. Let's just, for example, say that you asked your own personal child, if you have one, or maybe it was a brother or sister, to clean up their room. And you come back in and their room looks great because they put absolutely everything underneath the bed. And you come in and you say, good job. Good job what? Good job that my room's clean? Good job that I was able to hide everything under the bed? What was the good job for? So when you get those gross, gratuitous praises, you're not going to, next time you're going to get more stuff under the bed because you said it was a good job. But if you say to them, I really like the surface of this room, it's really nice and clean. Did you hang up the things? What did you do with the things that were laying around all over? Then they have an opportunity to say, well, I put these things in the hamper, I hung these things up, and I hid the rest of it under the bed, right? But what you're doing is not rewarding in general, you're rewarding in specifics. And I think that that helps build that whole culture that says, it's okay. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to look like somebody else. I can look like me. And that's enough. And so I think that that's really part of what we're trying to do in this whole notion of building that self-confidence and that self-esteem and self-worth. So Brett?
Yeah, I mean, to me, goal setting's everything, right? Everything starts in your mind first. And, the old adage of measure 4 times, cut once versus you cut and it's too short. Now you're in big trouble. I think Robert did that on my patio cover, but I don't know. I'm not gonna trash talk him when he can't speak up for himself. Right. But I think that everything, happens in your mind first. I do want to identify what I think the difference is between a dream and a goal. Because a lot of people say, oh, I have this goal. And I'm like, have you written it down? And they say, no. And I'm like, I think that's a dream, right? When you write something down, that becomes a goal. So I think it needs to be very formalized. I think a lot of times, people will say, oh, I want to be a millionaire. Well, that's just a dream, right? Now, if you write that down, I want to be a millionaire, and you're looking at that, and they've done a lot of research on vibrational, mindset and stuff, and it's biblically speaking, as a man thinketh, so he is, and you can move mountains with your mind and all of this stuff. So if you're setting very specific goals and you're putting the benchmarks in there and you're hitting the benchmarks along the way, of course your self-esteem is going to go up. You're going to feel great about all of those things. The other thing is, I always tell people, when you write down your goal, double it. I didn't learn much in college to be a teacher, very little. But one thing that I did learn was, they said if you want 500 computers, ask for 1,000, double it. So if, let's just say hypothetically, your goal is to graduate, let's say in 3 years, right? Then you may want to put 2 years on it, or that's not a double, but that's a little bit quicker. Or if you want to make $100,000, make it be 200,000 for the year. And I think that that really helps them to be able to get it. And the other saying is something like, aim for the stars, you can still land on the moon and it's still good, or however that saying goes. I forget, maybe that's vice versa. But I just think that that goal setting is huge in life, and I think it's really big once you achieve those for self-esteem as well.
Absolutely. The fan is blowing in my eye, which is not a great thing.
Well, I hate the
So,
hay fever around here, man. My eye feels like I've been rubbing it all day long. It's like, man, it's
yeah,
tough here in Bakersfield.
for sure. So, Robert, who do we have with us tonight? Anybody that's a returning person, or who's with us tonight?
Yes, so we have around like 5 people on Twitch, and we have 6 on YouTube, and let me see, and then we have 7 on TikTok.
All right. Well, welcome to all of you to Twitch, YouTube, and to TikTok. We're glad you're here. Thank you so much. And if any of you are interested in getting some information, some written information on self-esteem, some strategies to help build self-esteem, please put your email in the chat box so that we can send you something that would be focused on that. That and it'll be a couple pages for you to read through. So thank you for that, and we're really glad that you're here. We appreciate your coming. Okay, Robert, I think we have time for a couple more questions.
Okay, our next question is, how can I help youth overcome fear of failure?
What's the acronym for that? False evidence appearing real.
Yes, yes, right, for sure. And fail is first attempt in learning, right? It's perfectly okay. And there's a lot of times that it's false evidence, right, that appears real to us, and we that's fear. But I think that all of us have fearful moments where you think, oh, wow, is this the time that I'm going to really blow it? Is this the time I won't be successful? Is this the time, right? We have those apprehensions, but the courage happens when you go through, you work through that so that you can say, yes, I was afraid of that, but I was able to work through it and I was able to deliver on that. And I think that that's really important that we do that we do more than just, let fear win, right? Because it doesn't need to win. I don't know. I'm going to guess even the greatest of athletes have their apprehensive moments before they go out, right? Will this be the time that Mahomes during the last Super Bowl, how many interceptions did he throw, right? How many lost plays? And was that partly because he was second guessing himself, right? Is it possible for us to win a third one? And so to do a three-peat. So I think all of that's possible. And I think we have to realize that that's part of self-talk. But fear is real and it's okay. Fear will protect us sometimes, but fear can also get in your way if you let it be a stop sign for you. So I think it's about working through that. So Brett, what do you have to say?
Well, I have a bunch of touch points there, so I don't even like the word at all. I just don't believe in it. Like, fear what? What's the worst thing that can happen? So one touch point is, I'd watch when I would be coaching my own son, but also the other kids on the team, like how to spin in the discus or in the shot put or whatever. I would just make them spin until they would fall down because they were afraid to fall down. And I said, okay, now what? You fell down. Now what? Right. And so I think it's practicing these things, or hurdlers. They'd be running. They'd be afraid to go over a hurdle and they'd get smack a hurdle and go down. Okay, now what? Right. You're still breathing. You're okay. Maybe you got a little blood on your knee. It's okay. So on and so forth. So that's one or a couple touch points. Another one was Ryan, my youngest. We were in Burger King one time, and I think I've said this before, and he didn't want the little toy that came in the Happy Meal. And so his older brother and I, which I had done this with his older brother too, I said, "You're going to go give it to that kid." And he was scared, man. And I said, "I don't care. You're going to go do it." So he went over there and asked the kid, "Hey, do you want this toy?" And the kid said no. And so he kind of come back to us dejected, and Nick and I, his older brother, we were high fiving him. Great job, you're the man, And he's looking at us like we're crazy. Like the guy didn't take the toy. I said that doesn't matter. What matters is that you overcame your fear, as Gma said. That's called courage, and you went and did it anyway. Another one was I figure in middle school I was the 11th best looking dude in the whole school, even at 4'2", right? So I went up to the best looking girl in the whole school and asked her out. She told me no. I went to the second best looking girl, which was her best friend. She told me no. I skipped the third one because she was a bad word. She was not a nice person. I went to the fourth one and she looked at me like I was crazy, but she said yes. And so I overcame my fear and I jumped up 7 places in like 5 minutes. And I'm like, oh, okay. Or same thing with sales. Every 9 no's means that the 10th's going to be a yes. And if that 10th gets me $2,000, then I look at it and say each no that I could have been fearful of was actually $200 in my pocket. So to me, it's all about your modus operandi on how you view it. I think there was this guy named Thomas Edison who, 10,000 times, he never looked at that as overcoming failure. It was just one other thing not to do. And that's why we have lights now and electricity and all of that kind of stuff. So to me, it's what is your modus operandi? What's your view? What's your frame of reference? And if you can help kids to understand, it's not about failing or succeeding. It's about giving everything that you have and let the chips fall where they might.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Uh, Robert, you're up.
Yes, our next question is, how can I teach youth to value their unique qualities?
I think that people value their own uniqueness when you value it too, right? If everybody were alike, if everybody listening to this podcast, if Brett and I and Robert, if we were all alike, only one of us would be necessary. The fact that we're different is why we have different points of view, we have different ways of looking at things, and that's valuable because nothing is the same from every perspective. I've often wondered if you could have this big giant ice cream cone, like giant, right? And it would have all 31 flavors in the top of the cone. And you stood in a circle around that. No two people would see the same cone. You would all see that cone differently because you might be looking at the pistachio and somebody else might be looking at the strawberry and somebody else might be looking at the chocolate, and you would be totally happy about that. And what you could agree on is that it was an ice cream cone, but the way you viewed it would be different. Why is it that we can't see the world that way? It's okay that I see it this way and you see it completely different than me. That's okay. Now you have to figure out where your common ground is, what you agree on. But I think that we too often want to keep pigeonholing people so that they look like we need them to look, when really that's probably not the case. They need to be who they are, and then we can benefit from that, because we're going to learn from that. We're either going to learn, I am never going to be like that, or I need to take that into consideration, right? And it's okay either way, because being unique, we all are, right? No two sets of fingerprints are alike. And we are unique, and we need to value that, even though well over 90% of all of our DNA is exactly the same. It's only a small percentage that identifies different things, but isn't it great that there's a percentage that allows us to be who we are and not just carbon copies? There was an old movie called The Stepford Wives, and some of you may have seen it if you're old like me. If not, the gist of it was that there was a community and all of the wives were like cloned. They were all exactly alike. They said the exact same things. And ultimately, their husbands would go off to work in the day, and then they just did this set routine, and they were all alike. And finally, somebody breaks out of it. But the point is, we're not all alike. No matter how hard you try, we're not going to be all alike. We're going to be different. We're going to have different strengths, and we're going to be unique. And thank heavens for that. So, Coach?
Yeah, I mean, right, celebrate diversity, right? We've talked about that many times, especially coming from a sports background. So I may be able to throw the ball 70 yards, but can I catch it? Maybe not. So I need somebody to catch the ball. It doesn't matter how good it looks in the air if they're not catching it. Somebody else has to be able to run it. Somebody else has to be able to block. Somebody else, right? So on and so forth. So my wife and I watch American Idol every year, and the finale was last night. And these guys, I mean, this was the best season by far as talent goes. But the final three and then the last two, um, it was just amazing, right? And for me, like I can sing a little bit, like I go to church and not embarrass myself, but my mom can sing like an angel. This guy Jamal that won, he's different dude, man, different dude. And so to me, I value the uniqueness of what they can do with their voice that I can't do. Just like, well, in this case, the guy's a pretty good athlete too, but maybe they would value what I could do with my body that most people can't do. And so I think that if we're teaching youth on a consistent basis to value their unique qualities, but also the qualities of others as well. I know my wife and I were talking about. She calls me a different animal. She says, "You're a different dude." And I said, "Well, why do you say that?" She said, "I think that the two things that you do that I think most don't is," she calls it, that I look at other people's captions. What are they thinking? What are they doing? So on and so forth. And then she said, "You're the most amazing self-reflector that I've ever known." And so when you put those two things together, that you're trying to help others because you're looking at their caption, and then you're reflecting not only on self, but how can I help them? You put those two things together, and it's amazing. So I think that, how can you teach the youth to value their unique qualities, encourage self-reflection?
Absolutely. And so, Robert, I think that we have less than a minute left. So I would just like to, I'm going to make one statement, and then Brett, let's have you make one. Self-esteem is important, and you have to start young. And as Brett said, you've got to stack those things together so that you can start to realize that you can. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. Either way, you'll be right. And if we want to build self-esteem, we have to help young people think they can. So how about your 2 cents, Coach?
I mean, it's 7 o'clock. I want to respect other people's time. I would just say, do what you can to help foster self-esteem in yourself and others, especially when it comes to you.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Take good care. I think that most of you might get Monday off, next Monday off. Woohoo. So if that's the case for you, enjoy that extra day, that extra